For me, the growth has always been as a parent, how do I raise my family and the foundation that I give my kids? And it's always been, for me, a man of faith. And that's how I've been tried to instill in my kids.
Welcome to Fatherhood Voices, breaking the toxic cycle. Dive in as real dads bear all, the mess-ups, make-ups, and every heartfelt moment in between. It's raw, it's real, and it might just change the way you see family.
Welcome to another episode of Fatherhood Voices. I have a very special guest today, and this is Eli. And he's special because he's the father of one of our team members that's been actively working to build out the fatherhood program so we can help fathers start to break the toxic cycle in the relationship with fathers and their children. Welcome. Thank you for agreeing to come on today.
No, thank you for having me.
And I want to start by just having you introduce yourselves, whatever you feel called to share about who you are, how many kids you have, and where you grew up at. And we'll start from there.
All righty. Well, my name is Elijah Godinez. I kind of go by Eli. You know, it's been a lot easier for people to pronounce. But grew up in Pomona, California, and I have two kids. My son Vincent, and my daughter Sabrina, and my wife Marina. Grew up in Pomona. My wife became. We were high school sweethearts. So, you know, we dated, and then eventually, right out of high school, we got married. My son was born in '88, Vince Godinez. Then my daughter, 5 years later, Sabrina. So, but growing up in the city of like Pomona, you kind of didn't expect much, right? So didn't really have anybody motivating me to move on or to pursue other things or have expectations for me. So I kind of did that on my own. But just was kind of the average kind of kid. Wasn't anything special, but other than that, it was like any other city, especially Pomona, gangs around you. I knew better not to join gangs, but I had friends who were in gangs, and some of them lived, some of them didn't. But that kind of didn't really interest me because I knew if that was an outlet for me, I probably would have got it worse at home from my dad.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So it was just he was my dad. He was a Texan. Grew up in Texas from San Antonio, and he was one of those machismo kind of guys. And that was the thing. If you got in trouble at school, you'd get it worse at home. So he kind of parented by fear. Is kind of how I felt. That's how it was. And there was four of us. It was my older brother. I'm the youngest of four, and my two sisters are twins. And so it was more like, you better watch yourself or else you're going to get it from dad. And it was kind of sad for my brother because he was more in line to one person gets in trouble, you all get in trouble.
Really?
So, yes. So he was more like, okay, what are you guys doing? Make sure you don't get in trouble because we're all going to get it. It wasn't never an individual getting in trouble or an individual, well, it was him. Okay, then we'll deal with her or him later. It was always, Larry, and that's my brother's name. It was always him getting in trouble for something that we did or didn't do or whatever. So
let me ask you a question about that. Because I've heard this before, that type of parenting style. I don't even know if there's a name for it other than ya se chingaron todos.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, okay, as a child, I'm sure it was like, you thought maybe it's unfair, it's ridiculous, but now as you've gone into adulthood and fatherhood, and I know we're fast forwarding, but just because I don't want to lose this powerful point. Looking back on it, do you think it benefited you, or do you think it was too much, or what are your thoughts on it?
Well, my thoughts are, I thought it was unfair because if it was something that I was doing that I wasn't supposed to be doing, I mean, my brother's 4 years older than me, but why would he take the brunt of the discipline for something that I did, that I shouldn't have been doing, right? So I didn't think it was right, but ultimately that was, how my dad disciplined us. Not necessarily my mom, but, and my mom always took a backstage to my dad because she was the homemaker. She didn't really have a voice. That's how we grew up. My dad, did everything, and he was big on discipline, and not just verbal discipline, but more physical discipline. And a lot of times it got out of hand. So that's growing up wasn't the best environment with that kind of discipline, and at times my mom didn't agree with it, and she'd get it too. So I personally, I just didn't think it was right. But that, to speak up, you're always afraid, okay, the repercussions of speaking up, And, for me at that age, I didn't understand. We just, hey, we're all getting in trouble, but my brother's getting the brunt of it. So
So do you think, now looking back at it, do you think it was deserved? Like that amount of discipline, or do you think there could have been a different?
oh, of course it wasn't deserved. It was just more of, I think that's just the way he was raised as well from my grandfather, and a family of 11 or 12 or 13. At that time, my parents had those size families, brothers and sisters. But yeah, it's never deserved, but definitely in retrospect, I'm sure, not that he's told me, but I'm sure he probably would have done things differently, but that's all he knew, coming from that generation of parents, so that was, yeah, I mean, it was like walking on eggshells a lot of times. We always went to mom for things instead of dad because we already knew the answer with dad. Well, no, I don't have it. Or, it was always no. But, so that's kind of why we always went to mom. Yeah, what's dad's attitude, or how is he today? So we can go ask for this or that. And sometimes it was, not that it was like that all the time with him, but the majority of the time it was, how things were at the house is how did his day go, in order to find out how things were going to be at the house. Or just let him go to the room. I'll ask him for you, because he just was, like I said, from what I remember, and not to depict him in a negative view, but that was what we saw. So it was, we just didn't go to dad because we just didn't know what
What dad was going to show up?
what, yeah,
Today.
what he was going to say, what kind of, usually it was always going to be no. But, like I said, it's more, for me, it was more, mom was the comforter to go to. Showed great work ethic because he worked a lot. He worked for the county of Los Angeles, drove 2 hours at work, 2 hours home, and then he did roofing on the weekends. So he was always good for work ethic, supporting the family, but not always there to go see the baseball games or the extracurricular activities that we had. So and because he was making money. So that was, that's the work ethic that he ingrained in us. So that was, I mean, from that perspective, that's good, right?
Let me ask you a question. Looking back now, and knowing that you and your siblings knew not to go to dad because it was always going to be no. What could he have done differently to try to soften that, and I don't know if that's the right question. And I think I know the answer to this one, but what would you guys have wanted from him? If you always know, like, he's always going to say no, so you distance yourself when it came to asking for things. What could he have done differently to at least open that line of communication?
I think probably just showing some compassion from our perspective as far as how we're internalizing it. Like, okay, if you're telling a 15-year-old or a 14-year-old to go get something, show us and don't assume that we know that. Because when, perfect example, working on the car or working on something, hey, go get me a 3/8 wrench. Okay. What does that look like? So he had very short fuse. We bring him the wrong tool. blowing up. That's not what I asked you for. Well, I don't know what I'm looking for. So show me what am I looking for so I can bring you the right tool. And then from there, it just escalates into, just a kick in the ass, or, next time, bring me the right one, or I'll do it myself. So that, trying to internalize that from, an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old, 13-year-old, and same with my brother, it's just more with some compassion, just because you have an expectation of what you want us to know, we don't know. So, it's more of that taking time to teach versus blowing up in anger. So I think having some compassion, putting yourself in that position, but it's we just never questioned it. We just did it, and sometimes, a lot of times, actually, it was as we were getting older and older, there was a lot of resentment because sure, could have been things done differently. What I've learned from that is I've learned what not to do with my own kids and my own family, and that goes in just a lot of different ripples of how he treated my mother and how he abused my mother and how he abused my sisters physically, emotionally, verbally. And that's the kind of man that he was. Do I blame him, or was that something that was shown to him from his father? So it's a generational, from generation to generation, because that's, the way he was taught, because that's the example he was shown.
It's ironic that this is now the 5th interview, and you guys came right towards the end, but the last interview that just happened for a podcast, he talked about how he wished his father would have showed him how to shave, how to change the oil. And then now here you're saying, well, what about a tool? What about, what is a 5/8 and so forth? And it sparked an idea. We are going to build a new journal, and it's going to have daily activities or weekly activities for fathers to teach their children things growing up. Because now hearing that was the final icing on the cake.
Yeah.
And I'm going to call them daily challenges or weekly challenges, but it's going to be teaching your son how to shave, how to talk to girls. What about dating? What is sex, as a young teenager? About tools. My father never taught me how to change a tire or how to change the oil. We just didn't have the relationship. He was disconnected.
Right.
And so, to be honest, I can't even change a lock on a door. It messes up. I do the best I can, but, so the basic things that a man should know, a boy growing up, I wasn't taught those things. Right. So a lot of times I felt incapacitated, but then just hearing that you got punished and then, your dad had a short fuse, it's making me realize that there's a need for a journal where it's going to give challenges where fathers can now teach their kids about life.
Yeah. And in retrospect, as I think of my son, is early on, because, I'm still learning, my son was born when I was 19 and we had just gotten married, and he was 6 months. But those characteristics, it's a learned to parenting as you get older, because at 19, 20, even in my 20s, it's, you don't know everything, but you still have that arrogance that I'm going to not do what my parents did, but somehow your dad's characteristics come out. So it was, and I look back, at parenting, especially with Vince, that I feel that I was hard on him just because of my age at that time, because I didn't know, this is the first time, being a parent, right? So you have an expectation that, oh yeah, boys don't cry, you want to toughen them up and all that. But I caught myself as I was getting older, not with those same characteristics that my dad, instilled in me, and being too hard, especially as I was coaching him in the little league and baseball and stuff like that. It was just the environment that we were in. But as I became closer and closer to Christ, for me, it was more of Christ softening my heart on how to parent. And regardless of having a son and daughter, I really kind of just brought them up the same way. I disciplined the same thing. Just because you have a boy, they shouldn't have two separate rules. Well, boys, because for most of the part, boys, hey, you can go out, there's no curfew, this and that. But in my belief, I raised them the same way, because a boy can get in trouble just as much as a girl can, right? You can get somebody pregnant. Girl can get pregnant just as well. So I really didn't have two sets of rules for my kids. Me and their mother, we thought the same way. We had the same values and principles and expectation from both of them. And not that they weren't going to mess up, but I didn't have that attitude. Well, he's a boy. He can stay out till 3 a.m. You need to be home at 11 or 10:30. We didn't have those two sets of rules, and I think that was, as I learned to be a parent, it was more of, you got to be the same, not have two sets of rules, because that won't work well in the end, as they get older. So, but it was, I caught myself early on being hard on Vince. But you learn as you get older.
Yes.
You learn as you get older.
No, yes, you do. So who's your favorite? Who's your favorite child?
My favorite child? No, I both love them the same. Like I said, I didn't parent them any which way differently. I think you have to be, the relationship can be a little bit different. You have a little bit different expectation, but with my daughter, it's more, you'll know because she's a girl, right? You want them to be, have that, confidence, even though girls will have, how would I put it? Trying to put it in different words. As they get older, the relationship you have with your daughter is kind of what they're going to seek as they start dating. So I believed in discipline, spanking, things like that. But it was more of a communication relationship with both my kids. Not that I didn't spank them when they were young, but I didn't really have to spank Sabrina. Honestly, she was a really docile kind of baby. She listened, didn't have any problems with her, as far as she was getting older, probably from, and most girls, and as they get older, women, the insecurities that they may have, that's something that you might have to cultivate so that they can get into the middle school and high school, and as they go into their own person, they kind of seek obviously what I've learned is what difference between having a relationship with you and your father and daughter is going to be the kind of guy that they attract, whether it's a dirtbag or whether it's a nice guy. So I've always felt that having that relationship with Sabrina would be, is great, be something that you can build on and enjoy as you get older, because it's different for Vince. Vince was more strong-willed. Didn't really have to explain a lot for him to get it, to understand it, especially when he got into school. So there is different learning capabilities when you deal with different kids and their personalities. Sabrina was really easy. Honestly, it was didn't have no trouble with it, and that was and that's the kind of heart that she has. She kind of always went to the beat of her own drum, and that's what I love about her. It, she'll figure it out. She may not be, with the whole group, or she was more of a leader than a follower. And I think both my kids were the same way. They just, gravitate towards different things. But I didn't parent them any different. Me and their mother, myself and their mother, they just, it was the same.
Right.
You be here at this time, you're not, and you know what? Next time you're not gonna go. So, but I also told them, hey, you feel something weird in your gut, you get out of there.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, wherever they're at. My son, he experienced a lot of different things. I didn't enjoy it. His mother didn't enjoy it, but we try to build the foundation for them so that when they get out in the real world, they have a good sense of mind and good judgment. Hey, whatever it is that you do, there's consequences to it.
Yeah, you pointed something out that I've been real big on, and that's where you said if something doesn't feel right, get out.
Mm-hmm.
And I know with my kids, we put some in play, like a emergency word, a
Right.
trigger word, or if we know they're going somewhere and they're feeling uncomfortable, they may text and say, hey, shoot out a word, and then we'll call and say, hey, you need to get home now, to get them out of there where they're saving face from the friends, but to get them out of that environment, if
Right.
it's drug use or people
Yeah.
over drinking.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important for, families, especially the father, as the head of the household most of the time, to really come up with a contingency plan. It sounds like, that's what you were doing. Like, hey, if something doesn't feel right, get out of it. And now with technology, it's important for fathers to put this plan in place, not only as they're growing up, middle school, high school, but even as adults. As adults, you'd be surprised how many of our adult children are in domestic violence relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they need that out. They're afraid. And so I think these trigger words, contingency plans that we put in place can also help them into adulthood. So glad you brought that up, because that just sparked me wanting to share that parents should really have a contingency plan for their children.
No, absolutely. I mean, like I said, Vince was a little bit different. I had to wait at the bottom of the stairs, 3 a.m. Hey, that kind of thing. But with Sabrina, I think it was more of not that Vince didn't respect me or both him, myself, and his mother. I think Sabrina was just, this isn't for me, or whatever that is. So, with Vince, he was more curious, maybe.
Is your father still alive?
My father's still alive. He just turned 79, and he lives in Pomona as well.
Okay. What's your relationship with it?
It's good. It's not the best, only because, there's just a lot of space and time there that him and my mother aren't together. They got divorced when I was maybe 18, 19, later, older. But I think a lot of resentment just because of the way he treated my mother and the family unit. Like I said, he was abusive in all ways and a womanizer. So that, from that perspective, I just, that's when the family just started breaking apart. We were doing our own thing. How am I going to respect somebody that cheats on your mom and you still want to try and have rules and things for the house and all that? It doesn't work that way. I believe, for me, you cheat on your spouse, you're cheating on the family. So that's, you break that trust. And in that moment, he may or may not have thought that, but I mean, we never talked about it, honestly.
Really?
Never talked about it. Because my dad was just one of those guys that is wear his emotions on his sleeve or anything. He just wasn't. I did what I did, whether you know about it or not. It was just, and it's funny, we just never talked about it.
Do you think you'll ever entertain that conversation?
Probably not. Probably, and that's where we've never had that kind of relationship where we're all at home sitting down watching, hey, let's watch a movie together. We've just never had that relationship. It's just been dad goes to work, he comes home, he goes to the room, watches TV. If we need something, ask him. If not, it was always mom. It was always mom.
So let me ask you this question, because that's a very common theme with a lot of fathers, especially when they work a lot. Is they come home, they wash up, they have dinner, and then they go to their sports or their room. Don't bother me, leave me alone. Now this is my quiet time. And then the cycle starts. And then usually the weekends, as you guys are doing chores, there's no time to spend because the yard work, it's a common cycle. So little Eli, now looking back as an adult, little Eli, if you had this conversation with your father, what would young Eli want from his dad? How did you want your father to show up for you? Not your siblings, for you.
It's a loaded question. For me, just being honest, I would think, instead of going to do the roof, maybe, hey, come check out the game for, 2 hours, and then maybe postpone, doing that roof. But he was always chasing the dollar. So that's what I would probably ask him if it was in retrospect. Hey, this is when the game is. Can you take me to the game? Stay for the game. Right? A lot of times, like I said, I go back to mom. Mom was the one taking me to the games, taking me to practice, walking us home, taking us to school. Dad was making money. He wasn't there. So if I could go back in time, it'd be that. It's, can you stay for the game? Or you look into the bleachers and there, right? So, and that's why I said earlier, I've learned from my dad what not to be as a father, because I wanted to be the best that I could be for my kids, so that I don't miss anything that they're going to be going through, whether it's games, whether it's the ballet, whether it's, parent-teacher conference and all that. And I've been really fortunate to have that kind of a schedule of work where I could be there for all those things. Because, work is work, but family's always been, first priority for me.
And that's, I can resonate with your father, because I was always chasing the dollar. And I was that father that didn't show up at events. And if I did show up at something, I had paperwork in my hand, or a magazine, and, a letter that my daughter wrote me, or even just having conversations with them now and saying, these materialistic things were nice, because I compensated with materialistic things. But I wasn't there because I was just, especially being an entrepreneur and hustling, it's that scarcity mindset that the money's going to run out, but not realizing in the process, the most priceless thing was family. It was that time with my daughters, and I missed out on so many opportunities. And then having these conversations later on, and they're saying, we just wanted your time. So to look back and now trying to, as their adult children now, trying to make that time for them, or try to make up. And then now my youngest just had a baby, so I'm a grandpa now. And I'm called Larry. We're not allowed to call me grandpa, like Larry the lobster. So we just edited that out. I'm Larry the lobster. But it's like it's a redo. It's a do-over. But, now I'm trying to do things differently than I did with my girls growing up.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you're experiencing, well, maybe not so much a do-over, but I guess you could probably resonate that a grandfather's love is very different than the love of your children. Or what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that is, I see in my granddaughter, my daughter, in a lot of different ways. And it's almost like you get to redo it, but you see the love of your daughter and her daughter. It's amazing, honestly, because you see, not that we've tried to control everything, because they're going to parent their own way. They have the foundation of how to parent, but you don't have to be that parent. You're the grandparent, right? And you have to give them that space for them to learn how to parent and to learn how to discipline. But I see in my granddaughter Ellie, I see my daughter. I see her face, and I go back to those pictures or events or days where, you pick them up from school, but now your kids are doing the same thing. And those are those moments. Like I said, I've never tried to chase money. I've always worked and been constant and been present. But those days now, even when I come home, granddaughter, she'll open up her arms, hey, Papa, and she'll run toward me. But those are those moments where you just, you cherish, because, you think it's that time. And, we never know how much time we're going to have. Tomorrow's gone, or yesterday's gone, tomorrow's not promised. So you kind of just worry about today, right? And that's what I try to focus on is enjoy today, because tomorrow's not promised. So those are my thoughts on that. It's just, I see my granddaughter. I really do.
Now, how do you balance? Now you have grandchildren from Vance, his wife. How do you balance long-term relationship now with the grandkids? How's that?
It's tough. Me and my wife, we didn't really agree. Well, we didn't like that he was moving to Texas, but we knew, as a father, I knew that's what he had to do for work. If work was going to take him to Texas, then he has to do what he has to do, right? And he's ambitious enough to move up. Dad, this is what I need to do. And he spoke to myself and his mother. This is what I need to do. And okay, fine. I mean, you have your own family now. I mean, I can't tell you, hey, don't go. I think as parents, we're still try to guide them to make the right decisions and choices if they come to us for advice. But you never stop being a parent. We didn't like it, but that's something you had to do. And me, I'm more security kind of guy. Vince, he's not. He's more, I taking a leap of faith. And that's what I love about him more is he'll do those kind of things, and he'll make decisions, and he'll make it work out, regardless of what challenges he may face. So he moved to Texas, but the relationship, it's been tough on both of us, his mom and myself, just because we don't see the grandkids. And that was a tough adjustment, definitely. But I know the reason why. And I'm proud of him, and I'm proud of Sabrina for work that they do, but for the determination that they have. And I think, I know that comes from myself and his mother and their mother, because I've given them every, how would I say it? Every reason to excel at whatever it is that they excel. I've always supported, and I always told them and been positive. If you can think it, you can achieve it, whatever that is. But it's been pretty difficult for both of us, their long-term relationship. I wish we could see them more. As grandparents, you want a bond with the grandkids, right? Not that we don't, but it's not the same. It's just not the same. And that's not, I don't want to make it sound negative, but we'd love to have relationships aside from built more than just over the phone or FaceTime or something like that, and spend those moments that you won't get back, that the Easters, the Christmases, and things like that. And it's an adjustment. It is what it is, But yeah, definitely. I wish it wasn't like that, but he has his own family, and he's carving out his own way, and I can respect that, and and I'm proud of him for that.
you're 19 when you became a father,
Mm-hmm.
and the one thing that you shared is you learned from your father what you didn't want to do as a father.
Right.
Looking back now that your children are adults, are there any things that you look back on and you go, I could have done this differently? Or things that maybe if you could turn back time, you could have just changed it?
Of course, if you can turn back time, you try to do a lot of things that you second guess yourself, even as a parent, or you think they do that. Like I said, I think I was pretty hard on my kids, um, even into their 8 years old, 9 year old, 10 years old. I had a short fuse. I think I did. Um, that's just because that's what I saw. That's what I learned. And I picked, hey, this is how you have to be. But definitely there's times where you want to take back and you regret. But I try to, as you get older, you try to learn from those and not to make the same mistakes. But it just seems like sometimes, you relive those regrets. Definitely, there's always times where you want to change things back, or how could I have done things different? Do they resent me for that, or not? But I think the relationships I have with both my kids, has been, and I think that's why their relationships with their spouses are successful, is because I've given them a good example of what a marriage should be. That's the relationship that we have with my spouse, their mother, of what to expect and what is good relationship and what is not a good relationship. So, but I think as grandparents now, or even as adults, as you have adult children, there's always going to be regrets. Nothing that is, I don't know. It's just those little moments where you're upset or you're disappointed or things like that. How do we be better? How can we be better as parents, or even as grandparents? But definitely regrets. Yeah.
Now, you shared that your father worked a lot and he was chasing money. And then he worked for the county. Then he would come home and he was in his routine about just, there was a cycle every day. Did he show love, hugs to you and your siblings?
He did. And he did. And every time, he was like I said, he was a big disciplinarian. And it wasn't just, it was whatever was nearest, we'd get it, right? If we did something. But he would show some emotion and show some love, and explain to us why we're getting spanked, or why we're, but those, were far and few between. Because like I said, I think we were disciplined by fear. And we didn't really, we were only watching out for each other because of fear, and that's kind of how he parented, through fear. But he did show some emotion, but not a lot, It's a few times I can remember a few times where, that old saying, this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. But that's, it was my way or the highway attitude, discipline. And that went on with just about everything else. It's my way or the highway. You don't like it? Oh, well, how many times do I have to tell you, are you stupid? Or, and that's kind of what we saw day to day.
Now, because you guys were punished as a whole, so one person did something, everybody got punished. Did that create a stronger bond and unity for your siblings, or did that create more of a division? Like, what was your relationship like for your siblings? Because, I'm sure there was a lot of animosity. And then how was it, growing up?
There was definitely some resentment because you don't want to piss off your older brother, but at the same time, it's like, you want to be around them too, right? To see what they're doing. But definitely there's some resentment, but we were closer as well. Me and my sister Mary, we were probably closer than me and my other sister Martha, but because we kind of like doing the same things, right? Going out and stuff like that. But there was definitely some resentment on their part. I could feel it because, what are you doing? Make sure you're not doing anything wrong so I don't get in trouble. Coming from, my older brother. But I could feel that resentment because, they was just, they didn't want to get in trouble. They didn't want to take the brunt of it, for something I'm doing. So I don't agree with that parenting style. I didn't apply that in my own family, but I've definitely, you could feel that, coming from the other siblings.
When did it stop? Who was the one that finally stood up and said, "This is enough. Like, this is ridiculous"? Did anybody just put their foot down?
No, and that's just not the way. It just didn't work that way. As everybody got older, we all just went our separate ways. We all had kids, and we grew up, and everybody started doing their own thing. But there was reasons why that happened because the family dynamic changed. I don't know if I want to divulge into the specifics of those kind of things, but there was a lot of, on my father's part, there was a lot of betrayal. So that changed everything and why I have that kind of relationship with my father. When you have the father, which he's supposed to be the father figure, right? And kind of protect the family. His actions pretty much broke up the whole family. To this day, it's been never really talked about it, never really went to a shrink about it or anything like that, or therapy. But in just some small detail, and my kids know this, he slept with his daughter-in-law. Right? That's my brother's wife. When they were living there. So that kind of betrayal, I don't know how you come back from that. Never an explanation, never a sorry. This is what I did. I'm sorry. Broke up everything. So that's why everybody just decided to go their own way. To this day, just a lot of different things, that kind of nature, that kind of behavior really screwed up the family. I wish I could have been more involved in it, but I already had my family out on my own already. And when those kind of things was happening, it definitely broke my brother's marriage. They got divorced. When my mom found out about it, it had been happening. They got divorced. I'm the only one that's still married. In our family. So it's those kind of things that we've never talked about. Because we don't bring it up. But like I said, there was never a sorry. There was never an apology. There was never a group, hey, family meeting. I've never said this or I've said sorry, but none of that ever happened. That's why I don't have that kind of close relationship with my father. I respect him. He's a hard worker, but it's not something that, I don't know how to, I don't know how to feel about that.
It's very common. It's very common. And I'm just going to say, and I don't mean to just pinpoint, but I'm just going to say the Hispanic culture. That, and I'm going to use molestation as an example. It's one of those things where that happens because it's a behavior that's been passed on, and not in every household, but just when a household does experience molestation. And then it's exposed, and especially if it's family come from Mexico and then you come here, but it's just like, okay, well, that just happened, but we're not going to talk about it. We're going to pretend like it didn't happen. But the ramifications, the destruction that happens afterwards, because we didn't talk about it, and then the resentment, the hurt, the chaos, and how people, a lot of it's cultural. A lot of it's cultural. It's passed on lineage, and whether it's molestation or beatings or cheating, infidelity, it's unfortunate because now it passes on, and the family breaks apart. And then what happens when the family breaks apart? Your brothers and sisters have kids, and now there's no connection there because everybody's gone their separate ways. And I can attest to that because I've seen that in my own family where things happen where now we don't have relationships with, my dad didn't have relationships with some of their cousins because, just some of the trauma or just some of the actions that I had with my family and just choosing to disconnect. So it passes on. So now here I've got daughters, and instead of having a unity of connect, now they don't know who their cousins are. So there's got to be a point, and I guess this is powerful because this is almost like something that's not spoken about.
Yeah, and I put all the blame on my father because he's very manipulative and very selfish, and those characteristics, honestly, narcissistic. I'm right, you're wrong. Don't question me about my own decisions, about all that kind of stuff, right? So that's the kind of machismo guy that he had. Very well respected at work. Everybody liked him. They respected. So, of course, it just didn't stop at that point. And later on, come to find out that he had another child, the age of my daughter. That was a shock to me because I was, I think, 34, 35 at the time. I'm like, wow, this guy just doesn't get it, right? And having another daughter somewhere in LA that we've never met. Again, it's that behavior that you just lose respect for that person, even if it's a family member or especially a father. I mean, you just don't get it. So that behavior is a selfish behavior. It's just, for me, it's just never been something that we talk about. I mean, I'm not going to open the conversation on that. You want to say something? You want to apologize? Fine. But he doesn't feel he did anything wrong. That's the problem.
And that right there is why Fatherhood Voices exist. And ego comes into play. There's a lot of ego that comes into play.
Yeah, of course.
And it's unfortunate that the only time that these conversations happen is when there's alcohol involved or when there's a funeral. And then the moment's over and everybody goes back to their sides. I think what we're trying to get to here, just because you opened up that dialogue, what needs to be created, or how do we start that conversation? Because you're sitting here saying, I'm not going to open up that conversation. He can open it up. But then if he's a narcissist, and I 100% was a narcissist. So I, won't run from that. I was as bad as it come. And there was, like I said, emotional abuse and some physical and even infidelity. And so you name it, narcissist. So geez, so I can relate. And my not talking to my daughter for 6 years was because of my ego and because we were the same. I groomed her to be like me without even realizing it. And so now we both come to standstill. We're both wishing each other dead. And we're on our separate corners. And then finally someone had a break. And unfortunately, it took me going into the jungle to take some medicine that, just finally allowed me to get in touch with my emotions. But as you're talking, I'm just kind of reflecting back on my journey started February 20th of 2020. What would life look like for me right now if I'd never gone on my journey with ayahuasca? Because to me, I didn't have an issue. Everybody else had an issue. Like it was my way or the only way. And most fathers are never going to go and dabble with plant medicine. And not that it's for everybody, but had I not done that, I'd still be in the same place. I honestly believe, because I was in emotional books, coaching, been doing it all my life, but never had that breakthrough. When it came to business, I had it down. But when it came to family, destruction. So, and I know this is a loaded question, and this is the $1 million question that I guess we're trying to find is, what has to be done? What has to be created to finally get both people to lower their ego, to be able to say, if you know your dad's not going to have the conversation because he's set in his ways and so forth, when does that talk happen? Because is it going to happen when he's on his deathbed, at his obituary? Because the talk will happen, but it may happen too late, because not being able to I'm sure that there's a lot of hurt, a lot of resentment. And will that talk ever happen? Or does it just, it closes that chapter of the family tree, and then you look at it as, okay, we're going to leave this part of the tree out. This branch is going to be cut off.
Yeah.
And we're just going to, because I can speak from the Rodardi family. The Rodardi family was just trauma and pain and suicides and drug overdose. And, our family lineage, has been a lot of chaos and destruction. And my grandmother was one of the most devout into her faith and Christianity. And she got the raw end of the stick, man. Like I said, and I believe there's a God, but just to think in her eyes, man, if there's a God, like, why did you give me so much destruction? Where it was just chaos in this family lineage. And now I'm starting to break the cycle, because I went and, did these journeys and so forth. And as much as I said I wasn't going to repeat that cycle, just like you said, you took on some of the disciplinaries of your father on your kids. I took on just about every trait of my father and instilled it on my kids when I said I would never do anything like that. So, and maybe there's not an answer, but it's I if I didn't at least open up this dialogue,
Yeah.
I would sit back and regret it, and I guess it's trying to find, what do we have? And then this is catered towards fathers, and fathers are going to hear this, and there's going to be a father out there that's going to say, screw him, that's me, that's me, but I'm not going to, I'm not going to open it up. So, yeah.
For me, I think that chapter's closed, because not that I don't love my father, but that's something that he's going to have to find peace with, or if he's asked God to forgive him for those things. I don't know. I would hope that he has, but it's not for me to judge him for what he's done. So I trust in God's plan, that he has softened his heart, asked him for forgiveness, and that he has peace with that. And that's how I find peace with that. So for me, it's chapter's closed. I mean, I don't not love him, but it would have been nice for those, hey, this is the family, this is what I did. I apologize to everybody, but it didn't happen. So I'm okay with that. For me, I don't look at it any other way. If I was to look at it like, I'd probably go bonkers, because I find peace in God, in people, because people will disappoint you, hurt you. But that's what I find peace with, and I'm okay with that.
Let me ask you a question. We've created this journal, and it's a 52-week journal, and we'll be getting it out there in the next couple of weeks. And one of the things we've done is the idea stimulated from a gentleman that during COVID, he came up with these questions to ask his father.
Mm-hmm.
And actually it was his parents. And it was to start to kind of fill in the gaps of the family tree. It was to fill in the gaps of, you know, who was your best friend growing up? You know, what regrets do you have as a father? And so forth. So, but we've decided to take it a step further and say, you know what? We want to create this journal where every week there's a question that you're going to ask your father. And to get rid of that weirdness of, you know, especially if you don't have these conversations with your father, but now it's going to spark this interest, you know. So, hey, Dad, how you doing? You know, you talk to your fathers, whether it's good relationship, bad, you scratch the surface, and then it's like, okay, conversation over, 2 or 3 minutes or less. But now we're creating this journal where it's like, hey, Dad, you know, I want to do this journal so we can pass down to my kids, you know, and just to kind of fill the gaps in the family tree. Every week, you know, when we talk, I wanted to have a conversation with you in person or over the phone, and I want to ask you a question. You know, some of them were just like, who was your best friend growing up? What's a regret you have as a father? So there are different questions that are being created to stimulate conversations that you normally wouldn't have. And I'm going to ask you because you're a perfect person for this journal, because we don't just want to scratch the surface, but we want to dive deep. Now, would a journal like that help in the journey, or would it complicate things? Because this is what this journal is supposed to be. It's to be able to have these conversations, and you may not like the answer,
Yeah.
but at least you start to get some, and I'm going to say healing, or maybe it's just, you know, sometimes perspective. We see things one way, but there's a different way. You know, it may not be the right way, but it's like sometimes we don't listen to the reason behind it, you know, because there's hurt, there's pain. And I'm just wondering.
Yeah, that would be a good way to break any barriers down, to find out the answers that you're looking for, right? I mean, right now, I don't know if my father would understand it because he's 79. I'm not saying he's not there mentally, but I don't know if he would actually remember, quite honestly. But he does like, you know, he likes to talk, and he'll always go toward, you know, into the past and things like that. But having that journal would be something, an insight, definitely, on opening up that dialogue with that we don't really talk about. I mean, I don't know what kind of, I would put it this way, what kind of worms that would open up, right? Or if he would be in denial of those things. Once you, hey, how come you did this? Or why did you do this? Because it wasn't a good thing you did, and it hurt me. I was disappointed. So yeah, that would probably be a journal like that of certain questions. Would definitely open up dialogue. But like I said, for me, I see what's on the face value. So I don't think there's anything that would shock me of what answers I would get out of my father. Because from what I've already experienced and seen, I don't know what else would shock me, honestly. That's why. So a journal would be fine, but, you know, okay, that's what it is. Okay, fine. That's how I would look at it, you know, because I've seen a lot from his behavior.
And it's almost like not so much to shock people as much as to, I'm going to let you have your side without emotion. Like, I'm going to just pose a question to you. And they're not all going to be, you know, where you're diving. Some are just going to be on the surface, but some are going to be like, hey, why? You know, what happened to you, Mom? You know, why? You know, just, and what these questions are, we're just finalizing and stuff. Let me ask a question. So if we gifted you a journal, would you consider starting this journey with your father and doing this journal? You know, you wouldn't have to share with anybody, just being able to ask these questions. And like I said, it's not, and see, this is, you brought up a good point. The journey, the journal, yes, it can be a sense of healing, yes, it can open a can of worms, but I think more than anything else, as you're talking and I'm kind of processing, it's being able to hear the voice on the other side, right or wrong, because their perceptions are reality. And it shouldn't be a journal to judge them. And it shouldn't be a journal to now create anger or further, a further wedge. It's supposed to be one where they can speak their truth. And I speak the truth because usually people only speak their truth is when they're on their deathbed, when they're sick and they're now like they're finally letting it out. Oh, I'm sorry I never showed you I loved you or this way. So it's more just to hear the story, because when situations happen, the emotions run high and everybody picks a side. And sometimes it's hard to dissect, the right from wrong. And I'm just wondering if this is something, because like I said, the whole, purpose of Fatherhood Voices is to start to create that dialogue. And I'm wondering if this is a first step to start to bring closure to that chapter, because we're not going to live forever.
Yeah, and maybe wouldn't put it. I mean, that's a good idea, but like I said before, for me that chapter is closed. He does what he does. I mean, I don't see him that often, and I'm not resentful for it. I mean, I don't feel one way or the other about not seeing him. I know at some point there's going to be a funeral, but I don't know if there's any deep hurt, honestly, just from what I've already experienced.
Yeah.
Because of the acceptance of what I've already accepted. It. Okay, this is how he's going to be. This is how. Not that he's a bad dude now. I'm just saying he's just. It's been so long that it's nothing to fester up again. It's. I don't feel one way or the other about it. That was his life. Did it break up the family? Of course, but I don't. For me, I don't feel the journal would actually have any healing for me, because I don't, like I said before, I don't put my faith in people. I just don't. I've accepted it. I've moved on from it, and I'm not necessarily was in the line of fire for the most part. It was other people within the family that were in the line of fire. And for me personally, it wasn't directed at me, that behavior. So that's why I don't know if a journal would actually work for me.
Okay, so here's $1 million question.
Mm-hmm.
What do you need from him to heal? And maybe that sounds right, to just
to acknowledge. I'll put it this way: to acknowledge that his behavior broke up the family.
So he just
That's
acceptance.
It. Yeah, it's just acceptance.
To accept it.
Yeah.
Right or wrong,
right?
just
yeah.
accept it.
Because that never
Take
came out.
Take responsibility.
Exactly. That never came out. 79 years old now. We've all, family members included, it's all, oh, well, that's just what it is. Right?
Acceptance.
But just acknowledgement that, hey, this is what happened. This is what I did. And I'm sure, you have to accept it. It happened regardless. But for me, it wasn't, from what the patterns I seen, growing up. Okay. You made decisions that affected the family negatively. So for me, like I said, a journal, it wouldn't heal me, because I'm not hurt by that. That happened, 25 years ago, 20 years ago. So it's, I don't put anything towards that kind of stuff, because I have my own family, and I focus my time on it.
So what tool would help you allow you to close that chapter with a little bit more peace. If it's not a journal, okay, if he, if one day he has his Me Too moment and comes to accept responsibility and responsibility for it, would that be enough?
That would be enough.
That would
Yeah,
be enough.
that would definitely be enough. Just the acceptance that, you know what, whether it's now or whether on his deathbed, I apologize for all the hurt I caused this family. That would be okay, and that would be genuine, and that would, okay. And I kind of think that for me personally, I know that that's how you feel now. He just never said it. So maybe it will happen. I don't know.
Fathers, I'm just gonna, for fathers that are struggling because of challenges or mistakes they've made, and broken up families through physical abuse, emotional, etc. Just them accepting responsibility, just coming from someone that's, as a family that experienced, trauma. Pay attention, fathers, because accepting responsibility and acknowledging can be the healing that your children need and the healing that your family needs. This has been a powerful episode, and thank you for coming on and being vulnerable and sharing, because this is going to help a lot of people.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Like I said, it's for me, the growth has always been how, as a parent, how do I raise my family and the foundation that I give my kids. And it's always been, for me, as a man of faith. And that's how I've been tried to instill in my kids. Regardless of what's going on, regardless of what's happening in life, is having faith that God always has a plan for you. Not that I don't give my dad a hug when I see him, but like I said, that chapter's closed. There's nothing for me to heal from, because I don't rely on my father or mother or spouse or daughter or son to heal. Ask God to heal me, to work on my heart, and give me the peace of whatever I'm dealing with in life. Those are God's promises.
Thank you for that. And just on a lighter note, to kind of shake this up a little bit from a very somber moment, Vince, your son is my fitness and diet coach. Can you please tell him to put some cookies or some fucking sweets? And I don't cuss very often, but gosh damn, can I have some sweets? As a father, can you just tell him, hey, put a little bit of sweets in his diet so he's not always so grumpy?
I'll tell you, a funny story. At work, I suggested, this girl came to me and said, hey, what do you suggest, losing weight? And that was a perfect intro into introducing my son to her. Well, what's your information? I'll have my son call you. He's a fitness coach, instructor. He give you a meal plan and all that. And as soon as she called him, or actually he called her, emailed her, her first response was, and Vince, he's real meticulous about, okay, what do you want to, what's your plan? What's your goal? What do you want to lose? How do you want to look? All that, right? I said, well, can I still drink Starbucks? And then from there, it was like, okay, it wasn't serious. Are you really serious? I mean, so Vince's commitment level, and he'll tell you straight out, I'm not here to waste my time. Hence, having some kind of sweets or something like that in the diet plan is just not going to flow. It's not going to flow with Vince. And, that's just how serious he is. His commitment is to that client to get your goals that you want to achieve. And I've seen a change in Vince, and he's very determined and very strong-willed, strong-minded. But his formula works. And whatever that is, to whatever your goals and desires are, he's not about wasting time. But as far as having some sweets or something like that in those diet plans, it didn't work for me. So, I mean, that's just his commitment level though towards that person. And, I said the same thing. And I'm not on the diet right now. Believe me, I'm not. And, once I get on there, I'm going to probably talk to him and say, well, because I'm a pretty simple guy. I can eat anything all day, every day, the same thing. Some people need to mix it up and all that. But for me, keep it simple, keep it basic. I'll do that. Because I don't cook. If you say eat chicken for a week, this is what it is, then that's what I'll do. But there better be some results with it too. But yeah, Vince is, like I said, Vince, he don't play around. And with that story, it was just, okay, you're wasting my time. And Vince will tell you, are you serious or you're not serious? Well, call me when you are serious. But that's Vince.
Okay, well, I guess I'm just going to stay a little pudgy for a little bit longer. So, dad bod, okay? So,
exactly.
I'll work on it next year. No. Well, we're going to do a wrap on another episode of Fatherhood Voices, and this was a powerful one. And just going through the process, him growing up as a young father, and just going through all the ups and downs of life with family, with the children, and from fatherhood to grandfatherhood. That's it. Fatherhood Voices, breaking the toxic cycle.